The movement is bigger than the party. Hello, welcome to this episode of Escaping the Echo Chamber. I'm your host, Aaron Comey. Now, it's out. The podcast is out. The podcast version of the debate is out. The video of the debate is out. It's on Reason's YouTube channel. So if you want to go see it, please go see it. This is the spoiler review. I will be discussing details, specific points made, the back and forth. So if you want to go see it, I suggest you go see it now. If you don't mind it being spoiled, by all means, watch it later, and see what you think. If you agree with my perspective, because I'm not just going to tell you what happened, I'm going to tell you where I came down on the issue, on the main issue. You know, my overall thoughts. But by all means, feel free to watch this video and then go watch the actual debate. I'm telling you, it's entertaining, and I've watched it a couple of times since it's been out. Of course, I was there too, so yeah, it's definitely worth watching. Be sure to check it out. Now, to get into it, I went into that debate undecided. That's what I put down as my, the initial poll. Undecided. I wasn't sure. The proposition being, should we nominate individuals with the views, like candidates with the views of Gary Johnson and Bill Weld ever again? We should never again nominate candidates with that. With Dave Smith arguing that we should never do that. Nick Sarwark arguing against that proposition. It's a broad proposition. So that in itself, I think, is a very hard, because remember, the word never is a very significant word. But to get started, Dave Smith is a comedian. He's got jokes. He starts off with, thanking, everyone for coming. He's glad to be here. He also says it's a privilege and an honor to be on stage with somebody whom he respects so much and has learned so much from. And he's also glad that Nick Sarwark is there. So, there's several jokes. At one point, the singers back and forth. Nick Sarwark invokes Ben Shapiro's line in terms of, he says something, facts don't care, because these are the facts. These are the facts, and facts don't care about Dave's feelings. Nick Sarwark also has another joke where later on, and I'll get specific to what he says, but he basically says, in terms of converting 1 million people's minds, or getting 70 million votes, he says, I'd like to answer that question in gift form. Why not both? That was pretty funny. Dave did have a comeback to that, and he would say, and Dave's comeback was, I would tell Nick not to quit his day job if I didn't really, really, really want him to quit his day job. I'm telling you, it was entertaining. There's back and forth. There's shots. There's not just substance. It's entertaining. And I think that's important to keep our attention. Otherwise, it's just a dry academic, debate that you have to truly, truly care. And even if you care about the issues, just watching something that's dry, academic, not engaging, not exciting, it's still going to just make you just, tune it out. But this was an exciting debate. It was engrossing. It was engaging. It was funny. And there was, as I said going in, I knew Dave was going to come with a lot of passion. And not just because of the issue, because I've noticed, and this comes out later on, his personal feelings towards Nick. Even like I said, I've heard Dave debate Sam Cedar, and I heard Dave talk about Nick Sarwark, and I can see there's just like some very personal emotions and feelings towards Nick Sarwark that comes out. He reveals more later on, and I'll touch on that. But it was really good. So, boom, the substance. So, Dave Smith starts off with talking about how he is a Ron Paul. Ron Paul is basically who brought him into the movement. You know, he watched Ron Paul on that stage in an environment where George W. Bush was, you know, the drums of war were beating heavy, and you know, in this us versus them, they're the bad guys, we're the good guys. Ron Paul says, maybe not so much, you know, maybe this is the same thing we would do if we had some foreign power coming into, you know, our home and blowing stuff up. Maybe we'd be reacting the same way. And he said that spoke to him, that converted him, that woke him up, and that inspired him to become a soldier for liberty. Now, for those you don't know, reason why I'm a libertarian, Ron Paul. I was at the time that I started watching, I was seeing Ron Paul. I was doing informal legal work, informally legal research, and finding out how out of control the government is, and how out of step with the Constitution and its own laws the government was. Because I didn't realize, okay, this is what the law says, and the government is doing whatever it wants to do. But as I was doing this informal research, and I'm seeing it, and then I see Ron Paul on stage talking about, on a stage full of Republicans, and they ask him something about, you know, Barack Obama's overstepping government's bounds. And he says, yeah, I know Barack Obama's gonna, you know, exceed the you know, government authority. But these 12 guys on the stage will do the same thing. Which I was like, that's the dude. That's that dude. Once I saw that, I was like, okay, I just jumped up and cheered, and like, boom. So, I mean, that was something I instantly was like, okay, it's interesting. I didn't realize that Dave Smith was also a Ron Paul, you know, had been inspired by Ron Paul as well. But so we get into this further on. Dave starts talking about how he's a soldier for the liberty movement. And this is a very critical statement he makes right here. It's an important statement. He says, I don't care about the Libertarian Party. I don't care how many votes the Libertarian Party gets. I don't care how much money the Libertarian Party raises. You know, I care about the liberty movement and how many people we can convert, how many people's minds we can change. So we go further on. Dave is talking about how he doesn't necessarily have any purity tests. He wants the libertarian nominee to actually be a libertarian. That does not seem like an unreasonable request. Not at all. Then he goes further on, you know, you have to be against ending the Fed and ending the wars. Correction, you have to be for ending the Fed and ending the wars. That's like the core beliefs that he looks for in a candidate. So he goes later on, talks about how the running Gary Johnson and Bill Weld at this point in history was a bad idea because of how much anti centrism sentiment there was within the populace. I mean, if you look at Obama wasn't, you know, McCain, he wasn't Hillary. Trump is president. and he says, running two guys that are running, hey, we're two Republican governors from blue states. You know, that was the wrong message to have at the time. Then he goes specifically into views that he feels were disqualifying for Gary Johnson. Well, Gary Johnson wanted Bill Weld as his VP. And if you remember, it's being so long removed from that was an issue. That Gary Johnson went up on stage and says, this is who I want as my VP. And like I don't even know if I can run the race without this guy as my VP. That was a significant issue because at the time I wasn't at the 2016 convention. I'm at home watching it on C-SPAN, and I'm watching the tally and results come back. You know, rooting for Larry Sharpe. I'm like, okay, because I'm watching Larry, you know, start inching up, and I'm like, and I'm seeing how close he got. So, but then you see, you know, Gary Johnson get up there and say, this is who I want as my VP. I want Bill Weld. And so that brought back those memories to me because it's been a long time since I've actually thought about that aspect of the 2016 race. But then we go forward and he says, you know, Bill Weld was a lobbyist for Raytheon, something I don't think I recalled. Yeah. And, you know, he vouched for Hillary Clinton. That I definitely remembered. I mean, I don't think any of us forgot that interview on MSNBC. It was Rachel Maddow, where he's asked about his candidate, his running mate. And he decides to, you know, for some reason, endorse. That was a soft endorsement of Hillary Clinton. I thought it was utterly ridiculous. It was absurd, but okay. So that's Dave Smith's core positions. Nick comes up and Nick starts talking about how, you know, yeah, it's interesting that we're here, that we're talking about this proposition. It's a broad proposition. But what we have here is trying to decide what the best strategy for the LP, for the Libertarian Party, is going to be. He says he believes the Libertarian Party has to be focused on running candidates and getting votes. That there's things that you couldn't be worried about, that the party isn't in the educating business. It's not in the think tank business. It's not in the converting business. Then he, you know, like joke, it's not in the podcasting business, which I hear is pretty lucrative. So then he hits a point that is huge. He says, the politics is a game and it's run by certain rules. Within politics, we have to play the game by these rules to be effective in politics. But Dave doesn't care about politics. Dave said he doesn't care about the Libertarian Party, which is understandable. But that's what this debate is about. What does the Libertarian Party do? What is the best strategy for the Libertarian Party? Not the Liberty Movement. This is what really hit so hard. I agree that the Liberty Movement should be trying to change minds, should be trying to get people converted, should be doing so much more than the Libertarian Party is doing. I believe the Liberty Movement is bigger than the party. The party, however, it has a very specific job to do. That job is in politics. So while the liberty movement can do so much more, the party needs to remain focused on its job. It's a part of the liberty movement, not vice versa. So, right then, that point, I'm like, that's a very strong point, and that's when things started shifting in terms of what I was thinking about, because Dave Smith talked about the rationality of getting 70 million votes versus changing 1 million minds, and he's like, we're not going to get 70 million votes unless we can change 1 million minds, and then 1 million more, and then 1 million more, and then 1 million more, and changing minds is important. But so I'm in New York. For those of you that don't know, I'm here in New York State, where we don't have. I'm trying to think, how many registered libertarians did we have in New York? Was it under 10,000? Yeah, it was way under 10,000. However, in this last election, 2018's election, the Libertarian Party, with Larry Sharpe running for governor, got over 90,000 votes. We didn't have to convert 90,000 people to libertarians. We needed to get 90,000 people to vote for us. So now, let me tell you why that's important. Because with that 90,000 votes, and by getting over 50,000 votes, the Libertarian Party in New York got official party status. That meant that there was no more need to go out every time we were trying to run a candidate and get 5,000, 7,000, 15,000 signatures, which takes so much energy, so much time, so much money, and stops us from being able to do so many other things, like just running a campaign, trying to just get signatures to get our candidates on the ballot. Getting votes is a significant aspect within the political game in order to give our candidates more leeway, more ability to focus on the campaigns, and give the activists, the party members that are active and out there doing stuff, give them more ability to just focus on getting candidates' names out there, their messages out there. So getting votes is huge. But Dave Smith has already said he doesn't care about the party. And something else that happens later on, which further demonstrates this, is critical in coming to a decision and shaping where my position came out on the issue. Because Dave Smith isn't familiar with this, which is cool. But the proposition is about what the party does. And if you don't understand what the party does and what the party needs to get done in order to be viable, in order to be able to get candidates on the ballot, then you're losing the argument on what the best strategy for the party is. The movement is bigger than the party. The movement has to do so many other things, but the party needs to be concerned with certain logistics, certain day-to-day things, certain things that may be mundane, boring, that may even frustrate and irritate and anger you. But that's the party's job. It's a political party. It's got to play politics. It's got to play by the rules of the political system, or at least by the electoral system. So even if it's not playing by the political system, which is this more in terms of the the way in which people carry themselves. It has to be concerned with the electoral system and the rules that the boards of elections throughout the states have set up, that the Federal Election Commission has set up. These are actual real rules and laws that we must face as a reality as a party in order to get our candidates out there, to get our candidates on the ballot, and to have any chance of getting our candidates elected. So, I mean, that was just a crucial point. But Nick then goes into some of the facts, the numbers, because he highlights how much Dave admires Ron Paul and would want Ron Paul to have been the candidate. But he says, hey, Ron Paul ran for president of the LP in '88. And he talked about his fundraising numbers, which were good for them, and in real dollars were better than some of Gary Johnson's numbers. But then he talked about Gary Johnson's numbers in 2016. 2012, yeah, his numbers weren't great. But in 2016, he raised, Gary Johnson and Bill Weld raised over $12 million, got over 4.5 million votes. That's big. That's big. But he's like, okay, we got these people's votes. And Dave's position, I understand where he's coming from, but I disagree. His position that, so it doesn't matter if we get people's votes if they're not libertarian. Nick's point being, people aren't going to eat the whole elephant at once. It's got to be baby steps. We've got to give some people a reason to take a step in this direction and then help them take further steps. If you're watching and involved in the political day-to-day of out there campaigning and canvassing, you know this to be a fact. You'll know that you won't just go up to somebody and say, oh, the Federal Reserve is evil. All these wars need to stop. Gun laws don't work. The drug war needs to end. Boom. Like, you're not just going to run down the entire libertarian platform and then say, boom, are you in? And the person's going to go, yeah, I'm in. If that person says they're in, they were a libertarian already. Most people aren't libertarians already, and we've got to stop pretending that they are. Most people will be able to agree with us on 1, 2, maybe a few more issues. That's the beginning. That's when the conversation begins. And that they may be able to, at that point, recognize the hypocrisy, the problems with their own political party, and then start coming over. But it doesn't happen all at once. It is a matter of meeting people where they're at rather than by just focusing on what's important to us. Because the whole point about him talking about the ending the wars and ending the Fed. Now, I guarantee you there's a lot of people out there who care about ending the wars. There's a lot of people. People who care about ending the Fed. How many people? There's so many people that don't even know what the Federal Reserve is. There's so many people that don't even realize the Federal Reserve isn't actually federal. They don't know what it does. They don't care. They don't care now because they don't know. They have so many other things that they're worried about. And I'm not saying that doesn't mean the Federal Reserve doesn't affect them. It does, but they don't know it. And until they know it, they're not going to be as concerned about it. They're not going to be up in arms about it. And they're not going to consider this an issue that they should be paying attention to. So you need to be speaking about things that they do pay attention to and that they do think affect their lives. You've got to meet them where they're at. So in talking about, in talking about what is the best strategy, just trying to convert people at once isn't a viable strategy. It, especially not from a political standpoint. Getting them to vote, getting them to start making steps, because once they vote for you or for one candidate, that makes them able to see your party. So now in New York, you've got 90,000 people voted for Larry Sharpe. Now they're looking at other libertarian candidates. And you've got to make sure we keep putting up libertarian candidates that people can say, oh, I agree with this, I agree with that. Oh, I like this person. This person makes sense. This policy makes sense. I don't agree with this, but you know what? I voted libertarian once. I don't mind doing it again. That begins to break down the binary mentality that people have been like poisoned by, and that the two old parties are pushing on people that there's only two choices. Getting past that is huge, and it doesn't happen all at once. So just getting people to take a step by actually voting for candidates, because like Nick said, and Dave said that that's a negative, and this is where I disagree with him again. He says, okay, we've got 4.5 million people voted for the LP candidate, but they're not libertarian. There's 15,000 paid dues-paying members, and then 600,000 registered, registered party members. But that's the key. I mean, if you realize how many more people voted LP than actually are LP, you'll see that it doesn't happen all at once. That you've seen over like 4 million people take a step towards a party, take one step towards a party that they're not a part of. That's an opening. You need to encourage that opening. You need to take advantage of that opening and continue to show them where it makes sense for them to make further steps towards the party. So I get where Dave is coming from, but he says he's not looking for purity tests. I mean, if you want somebody all in or not, that's a purity test, though. And I'm not the person to criticize purity tests, but if you're saying you're not using purity tests, and you are. But I think purity tests may have their place. Purity tests may have their place in leadership. They may even have their place in candidates. In fact, and this is why I started undecided, because I do believe candidates should be libertarian. I believe Gary Johnson had enough libertarian ideas, and so he may not be as libertarian in some people's minds, and there may be things I disagree with him on, but I do realize that there are different libertarian, like all ideologies, is a spectrum. Libertarian, like all ideologies, exists at a spectrum. So this, I even though there's somebody who I may not like as a libertarian, I may not believe is sufficient. That's my personal preference. But I have to realize that they may fall within an acceptable spectrum of libertarianism. That means they're moving us and they're willing to move us in the right direction. And I also got to realize that as a candidate, as a former candidate, our policy is going to be so much different from our philosophy. So much different. Because when I was running for office, I wasn't calling for the abolishment of the public school system. I don't want the public school system to exist, but we're not going to get there. We're not going to get there overnight, and that's not going to be my first priority. My first priority has to be to make it at least my first priority in my election was to make the public school system actually work for the public, instead of working for the elite, for the government, and just wasting people's time and creating obedient employees that can't ever thrive throughout their life. So the policies of a candidate will look a lot different from their philosophies, simply because getting from where we are to where we need to be is a process, and it's going to take a lot. And if you don't care about that, if you're not paying attention to that, then you may feel, oh, you're selling out libertarianism. Like, no, hold up. I want to get there. But this is the path I know we have to take to get there. Because if we try to go straight there from here, it's going to cause chaos. It's going to destabilize things. And then people are going to say, we can't ever trust those libertarians again. Because that's something I took very real to heart when I ran. That if some fluke was to happen, I was to get elected, and I screw up, and I just start implementing, okay, libertarian policy, this, libertarian, this is what we're going to do. Cut this, cut this, cut this. And then people start suffering. Especially in New York City, every media outlet would cover it. That would be the death of the Libertarian Party. Because they say, look what happened. They elected a libertarian mayor, and everything went to shit. Everything went to hell. They elected a libertarian mayor and everything went to hell. And that would be bad for the party. That would make me an enemy of the liberty movement. If I just was oblivious to the effect that my policies would have on people's lives. But it was a great debate. And so clearly, as you're seeing, as this discussion went on, and certain points that were made, I had to say, you know what? Once Dave says, I don't care about the Libertarian Party, and even some further on, he asked a question about, Gene Epstein actually asked Nick Sarwark, who would he choose in 2020, Ron Paul-like candidate or a Gary Johnson candidate? And Nick says, hey, it depends on the time, what he thinks is right for the climate. And he says boldness is without a doubt something that should be a factor and should be a characteristic of the candidate. But he felt that at the time in 2016, two former governors, over 8 years of it was 16 years, at least 16 years of executive experience versus Hillary's no executive experience, and Donald Trump being a reality TV show star, that in itself made them stand out from them. Then Nick winds up asking Dave a question about who does he think should be the 2020 candidate. He didn't have an answer. He didn't have a specific answer of somebody who's just out there. He didn't know who's running currently for the LP. And, he says at the bare minimum, they should be anti-war, anti-Fed. And I know Tulsi Gabbard is anti-war. I think she said something about the Fed, at least auditing it. I think she has. So at that point, is Tulsi Gabbard sufficiently libertarian enough? Is she a libertarian? I don't believe she is. Do I accept her as a candidate if she was to run for the LP nomination? Would Dave at that point accept her as a candidate? I don't know. But the fact that he didn't know who is running, he doesn't have an idea of who should run, that kind of solidified it for me and saying, okay, as much of a soldier for the liberty movement as he may be, his lack of knowledge about the party and what it takes for the party to remain viable and to achieve the objectives within the political and electoral system in order to work on that aspect of the liberty movement and further that area of the liberty movement, that is why I would have to wind up voting against them. And that's why I ultimately ended up voting for Nick as the final, And yeah, so I wound up voting it for Nick because the political realities are something that I've seen myself. And an interesting thing is with all of the as much of a hero of Ron, as much as Dave finds Ron Paul to be a hero of his, he never mentioned, but I remember that Ron Paul, he didn't endorse Gary in 2016, but he did endorse Gary in 2012. And so that in itself says that at one point, Ron Paul considered Gary Johnson libertarian enough to be the presidential nominee. He endorsed him. Like Nick dropped the ball by not highlighting that. But, and clearly, it's not Dave's job to make the point against himself, score an own goal. But I did remember that, and I'm like, that's another factor to help make that point, that Gary Johnson at that point wasn't so bad. I do think that Gary Johnson's messaging was watered down some in 2016. I think I know why. But I ultimately, like I said, I came down feeling that proposition was not a very good proposition. It wasn't really his position. He wasn't focused on what the LP needed to do, what his strategy should be, or even he didn't care about the LP's efficacy, the Libertarian Party's efficacy. So that's why I ultimately says, for the debate, I had to go with Nick. I agreed with many of the points Nick made, many of the points Nick has made, and it's reality. We have to realize that what the party needs to do is focus on the details and the realities of electoral politics to further the party. The movement gets to do so much more. The movement has much more flexibility, but the party has a job to do, and we need to hope and we need to make sure the party remembers what its job is and it works within the rules that exist to advance the party forward. Thank you for checking out this episode of Escaping the Echo Chamber. Of course, as always, give me a like, hit that thumbs up button, share it, and subscribe. Thank you. I will see you next time.